We want to understand what a population and what a sample is. A population is the whole group, whereas a sample is a subset. So for example, if I'm interested in knowing something about Rhodes State College students, for example, how far they drive to campus, my population of interest is all of Rhodes State College students. If I ask my afternoon statistics class of 30 students, that would be a subset of my population. And that would be my sample then. A statistic is a numerical measure of my sample, where a parameter is a numerical measure of the population. So if I ask my 30 students in my afternoon statistics class how far they drive to campus and calculate the average, that would be a statistic because it's a numerical measure that describes my sample. Whereas if I know the average of all Rhodes State College students, how far they drive to campus, that would be a parameter. So let's look at this first example here. A company has 1,500 employees and found out that 8% of them use drugs. Is this number given in the question a statistic or a parameter? So we want to think about, are we talking about the whole population or just a sample? Since it's talking about the company having 1,500 employees, the 8% is referring to the whole population. Therefore, it is a parameter. Make sense? Okay, let's look at this next example. Suppose an investigator came in and asked 300 of the 1,500 employees if they use drugs. When the results came out, he found out that out of those 300 employees, 4% use drugs. Is this a parameter or statistics? Since the 4% is referring to the 300 employees, it's a numerical measure that describes the sample. It therefore is a statistic. Make sense? Okay, now when we gather our sample data, there's several different ways that we can do it. We can use what's called convenient sampling, which is really more what I was talking about when I just asked my class, because it's convenient to ask the people. The other three methods we have are systematic sampling, cluster sampling, and stratified sampling. Systematic sampling is if we number all of the population from 1 to however many we have, 1 to 100, for example, and we choose every fifth person or every fifth subject. That would be systematic sampling. Cluster and stratified sampling. A way I like to think about cluster and stratified is if I was looking at a university and I wanted to know something about my population of interest was the students that lived in the dorms. And let's say I had 4 dorms. Okay? With cluster sampling, I would randomly pick 2 of the dorms, or however many. Let's say I randomly pick 2 dorms, and I ask every person in those 2 dorms. That would be cluster sampling. Oops, sorry about that. Versus stratified sampling would be I would go to each of the 4 dorms and I would ask randomly, so 5 people in each dorm. That would be stratified. Okay, let's look at this example. A company that produces a line of aftershave just launched new aftershave product and wanted to know the customer preference. They want to select 1,000 individuals from a city of 3 million that comprises individuals from various age groups, education, regions, religion, etc. Their investigators split this mixed population into homogeneous or similar groups and then applied simple random sampling method to obtain the samples from each of these homogeneous groups. What kind of sampling method is this? Well, since we have similar groups and we're randomly picking from each group, just like with the dorms, since we're randomly picking from each group, this would be stratified sampling. Make sense? Let's look at this last one. Suppose a quality control technician selects every 75th bottle of cranberry juice produced in the production line. What kind of sampling this? Because it's every 75th bottle, this would be systematic sampling. Make sense?